Oh man, Stephen A. Smith, the habitual line stepper, has of course stepped over the line once again. But I feel like this time it kind of shows the hypocrisy of NBA media and a lot of the problems that come with it. To start from the very jump, this quote unquote beef did not start with Bronny or anything of the sort. This is a beef that has been ever present ever since LeBron really gotten into the league and his eventual rise to kind of like take over the mantle of the greatest of all time, in which, a lot of old heads, including Stephen A. Smith, just resent it and they hate that fact. And the fact that he has lost 6 times in the championships has done something to kind of like strengthen them and give them shield to say, okay, well, he will never be the GOAT in my eyes because Jordan never lost. And so over the years, this has been like the ever recurring thing with Stephen A. Smith where he kind of toes the line of being like, okay, is this kind of personal to Stephen A. Smith or is this strictly on basketball? But we've seen it with like Kyrie Irving where Stephen A. Smith just seemed to go at him at a rate that just felt personal. And eventually he did say it was personal, which is what many other people thought it was at the time. But if he didn't say that, and he said that kind of later down the line, this is when Kyrie was in Brooklyn and doing his thing and whatnot. And of course, he's not above critique himself. But you can kind of see that, okay, some of these attacks are a little bit more personal, a little bit outside of basketball. And you saw that a lot of things kind of got intertwined with Kyrie Irving's dad getting into the mix and whatnot. But that's something where a media personality should not even have on their record, on their rap. But now we're getting back to LeBron, and you fast forward, you just always have this underlying hatred of LeBron, or just somewhat general dislike, but also respect for his game, but only to a certain degree, similar to how Skip Bayless does the same thing. But for Stephen A. Smith, it kind of means to something a little bit more different, because by and large, Stephen A. Smith has been ignored by LeBron for a majority of his career. For like 20 years of talking about LeBron James, LeBron hasn't really said much to Stephen A. Smith, except for this specific time. Now, for me, I believe that Stephen A. Smith had a problem with LeBron for whatever reasons before the Bronny thing came up. But as Bronny was kind of shoehorned into the league by LeBron James, and listen, we can agree that Bronny was not ready and that he kind of got maybe a little bit preferential treatment to get into the league. But at the end of the day, what he was ranked like 55, drafted 55 out of 58. Honestly, who cares at this point? It's not like he was drafted first round. Now that was Dalton Connect. Now, if that wasn't Dalton Connect and it was Bronny, then we'd probably have more of a serious conversation. But that's not really what happened. So, to a certain degree, yes, nepotism did play a role. And yes, was Bronny not ready for the league? I made this video multiple times before where I believe that Bronny was not good enough to play in the league and that he needed to play another year in college. However, one thing that the Lakers are doing to make him better is the fact that he's playing in the G League, which is essentially what college should have been for Bronny, but it's neither here nor there. At the end of the day, my thing was I want him to get better. And I always kept it basketball. However, when you have Stephen A saying, as a father, I'm begging you, and making those type of statements, well, then you're not talking about basketball. At that point in time, you're just really just talking about something personal for some reason to a guy who really doesn't know you more than what he can see you on TV. And so it's weird. It's weird. Imagine you are a regular everyday person. You might have your son or daughter at your job, and then there's somebody who is like not even tangentially within your field is saying, I'm begging you as a father to do better. You don't even know this guy. You don't even know this person. And so it's ridiculous for him to say, that's how we have to look at it from an outsider perspective, because we're not in the NBA. It's hard for us to kind of sympathize or empathize from that perspective. But it's literally somebody who is random talking about your son or your child, whoever it would be, because they don't think that they're good enough or whatever the case may be, even though from, let's say, a regular person's perspective, they're probably just working numbers and not really holding up anybody's spot, and they're doing a pretty okay job for it. And so this is where it all kind of exploded. LeBron James, during the game against the Knicks, went to Stephen A. Smith during timeout saying, yo, chill out, man. What is wrong with you? Basketball, everything's good. But when you talk about I'm begging you as a father or please as a father, That's weird, bro. Like, that's really weird. Like, I don't want to keep saying weird over again, but it's hard to overstate how kind of strange that is. Like, you don't know this man at all. And so you have that happen. Of course, it happened in front of cameras or whatever, but we all kind of understood what that was, especially when, you had the conversations coming out saying that, yeah, this is exactly what happened. You had the little behind the scenes where he was talking to Richard Jefferson, and it pretty much just revealed the truth by itself. There was no malice threat behind it outside of like, hey, yo, chill on talking about me as a father or anything like that. But of course, Stephen A. Smith, in his dramatic self, went on his little podcast saying, like, I didn't really want to do this. Like, this was really like something that I was really neglecting to do. I didn't want to do it. I'm resenting to do it. But we all know Stephen A. Smith is an actor to a certain degree, and he's playing a character. And so he always wanted to do this. He knew even right after the moment happened, he was like, okay, cool, I got to do this. I got to do this, especially with the cameras on him. And so he talks about the subject. He knows it's going to get a lot of buzz. He knows it's going to make numbers and do well for him. And so one thing that LeBron did, he said, okay, cool. If you're going to do this game where you're trying to control and massage the narrative saying that, I would have done this or that or whatever the case may be, I'm going to do the same thing. And so he goes on Pat McAfee's show, where Pat McAfee is the well-known rival of First Take and whatnot. And so he went on The Ops, basically. He went on their show and basically talked about the whole situation and gave probably one of the most understandable perspectives you could probably have. And Stephen A. Smith again shows his butt, where he just simply cannot take constructive criticism, and he always takes things to heart. But also, it also reaffirms that it was always personal with Stephen A. Smith. See, if it wasn't personal, you would just say, you know what, it is what it is. I apologize. We can move on forward. We can continue to talk about basketball. But it wasn't. And so what did Stephen A. Smith do, along with his co-host, Kendrick Perkins, and whoever the case, along with his co-host, Kendrick Perkins? Now, first, I want to talk about more so how insidious it is for Stephen A. Smith to talk about these things, whether or not it's right or wrong. One of the things he brought up is saying that, why wasn't LeBron James at Kobe Bryant's funeral? Factually, he's incorrect. Kobe Bryant funeral did have, and his memorial service did have LeBron James there. He just requested not to be shown on camera. Really respectful thing to do. And then he said, well, why weren't you at Dwayne Wade's statue memorial thing? And it's like, well, he was dealing with his family situation since his son almost died. Now, regardless, even if what Stephen A. Smith was saying is true, which it was not, the reasons why he's saying it is to be nasty, is to attack character. Because if you were to insinuate, oh, this idol, your idol, Kobe Bryant, you're not there for his own funeral, his own tragic funeral, what type of person are you? Or even Dwayne Wade, where you're supposed to be honoring his career, honoring everything that he did in the league, but you're not there. What type of friend are you? It just makes you seem and picture LeBron in a certain way that makes him look like a terrible person. And there's no other reason for you to do that outside of it being a personal grudge that you have against that person. Because if it's strictly just sports, it's strictly just basketball, strictly just performance, then there would be no problem. There'd be no problem. And then you had Kendrick Perkins saying that, oh, well, I blocked him. Okay, yeah, who cares? But then you also had Kendrick Perkins saying that, hey, why didn't he go on like a black show? Why didn't he do this and that? Another attack basically trying to insinuate that he's not pro-black, that LeBron James, of all people, is not pro-black or not interested in uplifting the black community. All this is basically being okayed and greenlit by Stephen A. Smith because they both are in agreement that, hey, we are media, we are a conglomerate, and we must look out for each other. And so we're going to attack the person who's basically been feeding our careers for the last 20 years. Now, for me, this is more than just LeBron James, right? I know that there's a lot of fans that see that this is more than LeBron James because there's a lot of NBA players that dealt with this type of nonsense where everything seems like it's personal attacks. But because they're not LeBron James, because they're not a superstar, they don't have the luxury of defending themselves properly. And so what is the best way to kind of show that there's some type of media bias or some type of problem within NBA media is that you just let them talk. Just let them talk and you'll see it yourself. And Stephen A. Smith is showing it himself. He's showing it. He showed it from time to time. He showed it many times before. Habitual line stepper he is, and he's showing it again. But I really think the personal attacks he tried to lobby on the first take is simply just nasty, because I know what he's trying to do. It is definitely propaganda for you to make your adversary, a person who's literally just said, hey, listen, stop talking about me as a father and get my son out of it, because you're not talking about basketball. You're talking about personal stuff that you have, not me, that you have. That's a very understandable stance. However, because you don't like that and it makes you seem like a bad person for what you really are, you decide to do something that's really, really nasty and beneath you. Something that even LeBron didn't even do. But what LeBron did do is indirectly showed that these people should not be representative of the NBA media. I've always talked about how bad the NBA media is and how we need to do somewhat of a restructure, because it simply is just really bad. When you watch NFL, you see a lot of players, like a lot of the older players, talk about how great the young guys are, how good they are, how much they are forwarding the game, how great that they're putting the talent on the field, and that we couldn't even shine their shoes. I'm not to say you have to do all that, but still, you see that it's more celebratory, it's more fun, it's more light, it's more loose. NBA is even worse. It's way worse. And one of the things that I've been thinking about is that, like, why are people like Stephen A. Smith, Kendrick Perkins have any type of NBA vote, NBA MVP vote, NBA Defensive Player of the Year, or whoever? Why do they have a vote? In what ways are they qualified to even have a vote? Because if you were to ask me, and you were to talk about them and say, like, hey, what basketball knowledge do they have? Can Stephen A. Smith talk to you about rub? Can he talk to you about basketball plays, DHOs? Can he talk to you about that? Is he going to explain the game in that way? How smart and how qualified is he to even talk and have a voice on the sport, let alone that, but also have a vote in the sport that dictates whether or not people get paid millions and millions of dollars, and also to give the right rewards to the right people. At the end of the day, this is just another situation of the NBA media just being as bad as they possibly can be, with no simple recourse. There's nothing that's going to stop them from being worse and continuing down the line. And this is really sad, because this is more than LeBron James. This is about the industry as a whole.